Welcome back to Industrially Organized, where we use structure, strategy, and a little workplace reality check to help you build your success on purpose. I'm Nicole, and today we're talking about something that may sound super boring at first, but I promise you, it has a direct impact on your career. We are talking about organizational structures. And listen, I know the phrase organizational structure just made you yawn, but please stay with me because your company's organizational structure is not just an HR chart. It's not just something leadership talks about during restructuring meetings, and it's definitely not something that is above your pay grade. Your company's organizational structure needs to be part of your career strategy. You may be going about things in your career with expectations that do not match the organization's structure. So let's dive in and get that fixed for you. Stop waiting for success to find you. It doesn't magically happen. Build it with clarity, structure, and strategy on purpose. So, your company's structure affects how decisions are made, who has influence, how promotions happen, what performance is measured, what training opportunities are available, how your benefits are designed, how visible your work becomes, and how your career can realistically move forward. So, today we're going to break down the four common types of organizational structures: functional structure, divisional structure, matrix structure, and flat or team based structure. I'll explain what each one means, where you typically see it, and then we're going to get into the part I really care about: how you should use your company's structure as part of your career strategy. Because career growth is not just about working hard, it's about understanding the system you're working inside. And if you do not understand the system, you may be playing by the wrong rules. So, what is organizational structure? Before we get into the four types, let's define what we're talking about. An organizational structure is basically the way a company organizes its people, the roles, teams, responsibilities, reporting relationships, and decision making authority. In plain language, it answers questions like who reports to whom? Who makes decisions? How is work divided? How do departments communicate? Where does authority sit? How does information move? How does the company define success? The structure matters because it creates the environment your career is operating in. Think of it like this: your career is a vehicle, but the organizational structure is the road system. You might be an amazing driver, but if you're trying to drive like you're on a highway when you're actually on a mountain road, you're going to get really frustrated really quick. And that's what happens to a lot of professionals. So you're not alone. Usually, professionals try to use one career strategy in every company, in every role, and in every work environment. But the strategy that works in a large corporate functional structure may not work in a fast moving, flat startup structure. The strategy that gets you promoted in a divisional company may not be the same strategy that gets you noticed in a matrix organization. So, this episode is about helping you read the room, read the structure, and adjust your strategy accordingly. Let's start with the functional structure. A functional organizational structure groups employees by area of expertise or business function. So you have departments like human resources, finance, marketing, sales, operations, IT, legal, customer service. Each department has its own leaders, its own goals, and its own responsibilities, and often its own internal career ladder. This is one of the most traditional and common organizational structures. You typically see functional structures in corporate offices, in healthcare systems, government agencies, universities, manufacturing companies, financial institutions, large nonprofit organizations, in professional services firms. In a functional structure, people usually become specialists. You build depth in a specific area. So, for example, if you work in HR, your career may look like you start out as an HR coordinator, then an HR generalist, then a business partner, then an HR manager, then HR director, then VP of HR, and then maybe CHRO. Or if you work in finance, your career path may move from analyst to senior analyst to financial manager to controller or director. The benefit of this structure is that career paths are often clearer. There may be defined job levels, formal promotion processes, established training programs, and specific competencies tied to each role. So, if you're someone who likes structure, clarity, documented processes, and knowing what the next step looks like, a functional structure can be a good fit for you. So, from a career strategy perspective, if you work in a functional structure, you're going to need to ask things like, how do promotions happen in my department? What skills are required for the next level? Who makes promotion decisions? Are promotions based on tenure, performance, budget, business need, or visibility? What cross functional exposure do I need to avoid getting stuck in one lane? Because in functional organizations, it's very easy to become known only for your technical function. And that's not always bad. But if you want leadership growth, broader influence, or executive level opportunities, you usually need to prove that you understand more than your department. You need business acumen. You need relationships outside of your team. You need to understand how your work impacts the larger organization overall. So, if you're in a functional structure, don't just be good at your job. Be good at connecting your job to the business, connecting your job to other departments. That's how you're going to move from being seen as a task doer to being seen as a strategic contributor. The second type is divisional structure. In a divisional structure, the company is organized around products, services, geographic regions, customer groups, or business units. So instead of grouping everyone only by function, the organization creates divisions that operate almost like smaller companies within the larger company. For example, a company may have divisions based in North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. Or the company may offer consumer products and business products. They might have luxury brands and budget brands. You often see divisional structures in large multinational companies or in retail corporations, in consumer goods companies, in automotive companies, and large technology firms, a lot in pharmaceutical companies. A simple example of this would be a company that has a North American division, a European division, and an Asian Pacific division. Each division may have its own HR, its own finance, operations, marketing, and sales teams. The benefit of this structure is that each division can focus on its specific market, customer, product, or region. And this can make the company more responsive and competitive in the market. From a career perspective, divisional structures tend to create more opportunities that move you laterally. But stay with me, I'm going to explain that. It's going to offer opportunities to relocate, maybe to specialize in an industry specific segment, or to grow within a business unit. So your career may progress by moving from one division to another. For example, let's say you start in HR for the retail division of the company, but then you move to HR for the corporate operations. Then you move to a broader talent role across multiple divisions. Or you may work in sales for one product line. Then you move to a regional leadership role. Then eventually into national operations. In a divisional structure, career growth often depends on your ability to understand the specific business unit you support. So the question becomes, do you understand the customers? Do you understand the revenue model? Do you understand the goals of your division? Do you know which divisions are growing and which ones are shrinking? That last question matters because in divisional organizations, not every decision has the same level of opportunity. Let me explain. So, one division may be expanding, may be hiring, may be investing in leadership development and creating new roles. But another division may be dealing with budget cuts, restructuring, or limited promotional opportunities. So, your career strategy can't just be, I want to grow in this company. You need to ask, where in this company is growth actually happening? That's a different question, and it's an important one because sometimes your next opportunity is not above you. Sometimes it's just across the organization. So sometimes the best career move is not moving up in your current division. It's moving into a different division where there's more visibility, more investment, and more opportunities. In divisional structures, your career strategy should include things like understanding which divisions are growing, building relationships across divisions, watching where leadership attention is focused, and learning how each division measures success. You need to be open to lateral moves that position you for long-term advancement. A lateral move in a divisional structure is not always a step back. Sometimes it is strategic repositioning. You can move sideways in title, but upward in exposure, opportunity, and long term earning potential. That is career strategy. Now, let's talk about the structure that can make people say, wait, who is actually my boss? And that's the matrix structure. In a matrix organization, employees often report to more than one leader or work across multiple teams or projects or functions or business units. You may have a direct manager, but you may also support a project manager, a product leader, regional leader, or functional leader. So, for example, you may be a marketing manager who reports to the head of marketing, but you also support the product development team for a specific product line. Or you may be an HR business partner who reports into HR leadership, but your day to day work is heavily influenced by the operations leaders you support. You typically see these matrix structures in large global corporations and companies with a shared services model. Matrix structures are designed to improve collaboration, flexibility, and resource sharing. But let's be honest, they can also create confusion because in a matrix structure, you may have multiple priorities coming from multiple people, and somehow all of them think their request is urgent. This is where your calendar starts looking like a crime scene. Everyone wants a meeting. Everyone wants an update. Everyone wants a report. Everyone wants alignment. And you're sitting there thinking, I would love to align, but I also need to actually do the work. So, from a career strategy perspective, a matrix structure requires a different skill set. You're going to need influence without authority, strong communication skills, strong prioritization skills, be great at stakeholder management, be great at boundary setting, documentation, relationship building. But in a matrix structure, technical excellence matters, but it's not enough. You also have to know how to navigate competing expectations. Your performance may be influenced by several people, not just your direct manager. And that means you need to understand who gives input on my performance review, who has influence over my reputation, who sees my work, who benefits from my work, who needs to understand the value I bring. This is huge because in matrix organizations, your direct manager may not see everything you do. So if you are quietly doing excellent work across 5 different teams, but nobody is connecting the dots, you may be under-recognized. And no, that's not fair, but it's also not uncommon. So you need to create visibility without being obnoxious. Don't be obnoxious. Nobody loves that. That means documenting wins, sending concise updates. It means asking your manager how cross functional feedback is gathered. It means building relationships with the stakeholders who experience your work the most and making sure your contributions are not invisible. Performance metrics in a matrix organization can also be more complicated. You may have functional goals, project goals, team goals, and business unit goals. So you need to know which goals actually matter most because sometimes employees burn themselves out trying to be excellent at everything when leadership is really only measuring a few key outcomes. And that does not mean ignore the rest, but it does mean you need to get clarity. In a matrix structure, career strategy is about navigating influence. You need to understand that power map, not just the org chart, because the org chart tells you who reports to whom, but the power map tells you who actually shapes decisions. And those are not always the same people. The fourth structure is the flat or team based structure. A flat structure has fewer layers of management. There may not be many formal levels between employees and senior leadership. Team based structures organize work around teams, projects, squads, or agile groups instead of traditional departments. You often see these structures in startups, in small businesses or creative agencies, a lot in tech companies or consulting teams, in nonprofits and entrepreneurial organizations. In a flat structure, employees may have broader responsibilities. Job descriptions are going to be more flexible. You may wear multiple hats. And by multiple hats, I mean one day you're doing your actual job, and the next day you're helping with operations or client support, onboarding, marketing, and somehow figuring out why the printer is emotionally unavailable. Flat organizations can be exciting because you may get access to leadership, to fast decision making, and opportunities to take on meaningful work early. You may learn a lot quickly. Your ideas may be heard faster. You may have more autonomy. You may be able to shape processes instead of just follow them. But there are also some challenges. Career paths may not be clearly defined. The promotion process may be very informal. Job titles may not always reflect the amount of work being done. The training may be limited. The benefits may be less robust than in larger organizations. And because there are fewer layers, there may be fewer traditional promotion opportunities. So, in a flat structure, career growth often looks a little different. It may not look like coordinator to specialist to manager to director. Instead, it may look like taking ownership of a new process, or leading a project, or building a new function, maybe managing a client relationship, creating a system that did not exist before. In flat organizations, your career strategy has to be proactive. You cannot always wait for a formal promotional cycle because one may not even exist. You may need to define what growth looks like with your manager. You may need to ask, what does advancement look like here? How are raises decided? How are titles determined? What skills or outcomes would justify a promotion? Are there formal levels? Are there leadership opportunities without people management? What benefits or development support are available? What does success look like in this role 6 months from now? Flat structures can be great for people who are adaptable, self directed, creative, and comfortable with a little bit of ambiguity. But if you need clear paths with formal training and established processes, a flat organization may feel very frustrating unless leadership is intentional about communication and development. So, the strategy in a flat structure is not just do good work and wait. The strategy is track your impact, define your value, ask for clarity, document expanded responsibilities, negotiate based on outcomes, and make sure you're not just collecting responsibilities without collecting compensation, title growth, or opportunity. Because let's tell the truth. Some flat organizations will call it growth when what they really mean is more work. And you need to know the difference. Growth should come with development, visibility, skill building, ownership, compensation, or future opportunity. If it is only more work with no recognition, no title conversation, no pay conversation, and no development plan, that is not growth. That is workload expansion with better branding. And we are not about that. Now that we've broken down the four structures, let's talk about why this matters. Your company's organizational structure should absolutely be part of your career strategy because it's going to affect how opportunity moves. And opportunity does not move the same in every organization. In some companies, opportunity moves through formal promotion cycles. In others, it moves through relationships. In some, it moves through project visibility. In others, it moves through business growth. And in others, it can move through being the person who can solve messy problems quickly. And if you don't understand how opportunity moves within your organization, you may be putting effort in the wrong place. Let me give you some examples. In a functional structure, your career growth may depend heavily on mastering your function, meeting role specific competencies, and moving up that quote unquote ladder. So, your strategy should include skill depth, certifications if it's relevant, strong performance reviews, and manager alignment. In a divisional structure, your growth may depend on understanding which business units are expanding and then positioning yourself near those business priorities. So, your strategy should include business awareness, cross division networking, and being open to lateral moves. In a matrix structure, your growth can depend on visibility, on influence, on stakeholder feedback, and your ability to manage those competing priorities. So, your strategy should include relationship building, strong documentation, strong communication skills, and strategic visibility. In a flat structure, your growth may depend on creating value, taking ownership, solving problems, and negotiating your advancement because formal paths may not exist. So, your strategy should include impact tracking, role clarity, proactive conversations, and boundaries around scope creep. So, all four of those different structures require a different strategy. You cannot build a strong career strategy if you ignore the environment your career is operating in. That is why generic career advice only gets you so far. Work hard is not a strategy. Be visible is not specific enough. Network more is incomplete. You need to know what kind of organization you are in so you can make the right moves in the right system. So, if you're listening to this and thinking, okay, how do I actually use this, Nicole? I want you to start with these questions. What type of structure does my company have? Is my organization functional, divisional, matrix, flat, or some kind of combination? And yes, that exists. Ask yourself, how are promotions decided? Are they formal or informal? Ask, who has influence over my career growth? Is it just my manager, or are there other stakeholders? You need to clarify what metrics actually matter. Are my goals tied to my department, my division, my projects, or are they company wide outcomes? Where is growth happening in the organization? Is my current area expanding? Is it stable or is it shrinking? Then ask what development opportunities are available. Are they maybe formal programs? Maybe it's stretch assignments, cross functional projects, or self directed learning. Then you need to ask, what kind of visibility do I need? Do I need visibility within my department, across divisions, with project leaders, or directly with senior leadership? And finally, I want you to ask yourself, does this structure support the career I'm trying to build? And that last question matters because sometimes the issue is not you. Sometimes the issue is not your effort. Sometimes the issue is that the structure you're in does not match the career path you want. And once you understand that, you can stop taking everything personally and start making better strategic decisions. Here's the big takeaway for today. Your company's organizational structure is not just an internal business design. It is part of your career environment. And if you want to grow on purpose, you need to understand the environment you are growing in. None of these structures are automatically good or bad. They're just different. And different structures require different career strategies. So before you assume you're stuck, you're overlooked, behind, or not doing enough, pause and ask, what system am I working inside? How does opportunity move here? What does growth actually look like in this structure? And am I using the right strategy for this environment? That is how you stop guessing and start building your success on purpose. If you need help with this, I offer a free career clarity session. Let's talk it out. Let me help you gain clarity. Go to my website listed below or DM me on any of my socials. I'd love to connect and help you work this out. Until next time, stay organized, stay strategic, and remember, your career should not just be happening to you. You should be building it on purpose.